Fasten your seatbelts. I am taking you for the ride of your life. I'm going to show you what this car can really do. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Hang on.
Okay.
Here we go.
Hold on to your butts.
Go get him, kid.
It might be a tumor.
It's not a tumor. Not a tumor at all.
F.
You're going to ask me. So you can go ahead and ask me what you're going to ask me. And my natural response could be to get offended.
Hey, want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?
Yeah, well, you know, that's just like your opinion, man.
All right.
You're listening to the 30-something movie podcast. One movie each week, 30 years in the making.
I bet the Greatest Generation guys don't have to do this twice. We're three guys that are a little bit embarrassed to not have a Star Trek podcast, but we do for this episode, and we're dubbing since this is the second time around, since the recording didn't work so well the first time, we are now dubbing ourselves the okayest generation.
Yeah.
That is our podcast name now. That is what we are. We even, and I'm going to repeat it because we had a great joke about the A-Team. Because you had made a comment about how the Enterprise crew is like the A-Team, and like they go into a battle and it's like things do not work out well. It's like, well, the Enterprise is like, but we're the A-Team. Like this is your like top tier elite guys, and yeah. And we even had it. We even had a great bit where we were going to include like the A-Team, like, you know, Murdoch and B.A. Baracus and all that stuff, and that it's.
Kind of a crossover.
It was so good. I'm so looking. I want to make that now. Like I
think
want
it'd
to
be
take
awesome.
that. I want to take that opening narration and I want to turn that into like the away team. We said it was like the away team. You could paint their shuttle black and red. You know, you can change up that opening narration.
You know,
I think it's perfect.
In the movie, I think so too. In the movie they moved the A-Team forward. You know, it was originally supposed to be set in the 80s. The movie, they set it in the, was it mid-aughts or 20-teens, early 20-teens, whatever. Set it in the 24th century. Why not? You know?
Sure. The A-Team is timeless.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
In the 23rd century, a crack commando unit was sent to the brig. If you have a problem, if no one else can help, and if you can find them, maybe you can hire the away team. Dun, 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 dun. See, we can do the whole thing. Like I really think this is very, very doable. So
I think
I'm excited. I'm excited to be a part of this.
It is there. We're there.
I love this plan. I'm excited to be a part of this. All right. Well, as you can hear, I've got Bo and I've got Pat with me. Guys, how you doing?
Very well, John. How are you?
Oh,
good, John.
Second time around is a charm.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
So we are here to talk. We spoil things, and we're going to spoil things for the episodes, the 2 episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation, The Best of Both Worlds. We're gonna spoil the Borg out of them, and so just be aware of that if you have not seen it already. I think we talked earlier. I think you can find these either on the Netflix or it's on CBS All Access. I know they've got all the Star Trek shows on there. So wherever you're getting your TV from, there's probably several different places. If you are one of those people that sunk your entire life's fortune on the DVD sets of The Next Generation, very nice DVD sets, but as I understand, they depending on which version you bought, they could be a little pricey, and there's a lot of them. So if you have the DVDs, obviously you can go back to those and watch them that way. But if you have not yet, either through iTunes or wherever you like getting your podcast, leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you and hear what you're enjoying about the show. Always fun to read the reviews. And then visit our website, 30podcast.com. That's got all the different things, all the different ways you can kind of interact with us. We've got our 1991 movies up for voting. So if you want to help us out there and kind of help us pick and choose which movies we might be doing for next year, we would love to have your input on that one. So I think without too much delay, we'll just kind of jump right on into talking about Star Trek: The Next Generation, The Best of Both Worlds. So this one came out, it was Season 3, Episode 26, and Season 4, Episode 1. 16th of June, 1990 was the first one. 22nd of September, 1990. So you had a little bit of a couple month break in there. Rated TV PG. It was a total runtime of 1 hour and 30 minutes. And I think we all agreed that we had seen the edited together version. So we saw kind of like the quote unquote movie version of this, not the two separate episodes. But all of us have seen the 2 separate episodes as well. And we talked before about the very dramatic, Mr. Worf fire kind of cliffhanger of that other one that you kind of miss out on this version, but it's okay. Let's see. Yes, it was 1 hour and 30 minutes. And then Cliff Bowl was the director for this. He died in 2014. He also did The $6 Million Man, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, The X-Files. Producer is Ira Stephen Bear, who did Deep Space Nine and The 4400 and Outlander as well. Writers for this one were Michael Piller, who died in 2005, who did Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Star Trek Insurrection. Ronald D. Moore was also another writer, did Battlestar Galactica and Outlander. Cinematography was done by Marvin Rush, who did a bunch of the Star Trek TV shows, Hell on Wheels and Turn Washington Spies. And let's see, music was done by Ron Jones, who did Family Guy and DuckTales. Budget for this one, box office, Flickmetrics, Cinema Score, all those different things. Really not much up there on these because this was a TV show, not a movie. So a lot of those different ratings and numbers are missing. So won't find those there. IMDb, I think, gives it a 9.4 out of 10. So like a 94% for that one. So people definitely like this one. And I know a lot of times it's on a lot of lists as like one of the top 10 episodes of The Next Generation, or like top 10 cliffhangers in TV or stuff like that. So very, very popular episodes. Starring Patrick Stewart, who played Captain Jean-Luc Picard and Locutus of Borg. He was in the X-Men movies Dune and American Dad. Jonathan Frakes was Commander William Riker. He was in North and South Book 1 and a TV series called The Doctors. LeVar Burton played Lieutenant Commander Geordie LaForge. He was in Reading Rainbow, Roots, and Captain Planet and the Planeteers. Michael Dorn played Lieutenant Worf. He was in Chips and Arrow. Gates McFadden played Dr. Beverly Crusher. She was in The Muppets Take Manhattan, The Hunt for Red October. Marina Sirtis played Counselor Deanna Troi. She was in Crash and Gargoyles, which I think we noticed was very much a melting pot of next generation actors in that one, in the cartoon. Brent Spiner played Lieutenant Commander Data. He was in Independence Day and the TV series Warehouse 13. Will Wheaton played Ensign Wesley Crusher. Shut up, Wesley. The boy, yes. Pat, you had said that you enjoyed the kind of song they came up with for it.
Yeah, shout out to like the Greatest Generation podcast. My gosh, that is just a fun look and celebration at the show. And man, I crack up every time. They have. I'll keep it family friendly. They have a funny bit if you can get with their sense of humor. They have a funny bit about Wesley Crusher and his relationship with various of the, other characters and all that. And they've got that, with that, what's the name of that tune with the saxophone? Wesley, the boy.
Is that Baker
my
Street?
Son. Yeah. Fun stuff.
And I've gone back, as we're giving them a shout out, I've gone back and I've been starting to run up on, Greatest Generation episodes. Like I've run out of some of the recent ones and then I get all caught up and I'm like, well, but I want to listen to something else and there's no more new ones. So I haven't gone back yet and started to go through some of the older ones, but I did find Greatest Discovery. So I started going through some of the Greatest Discovery ones and listening to those too. That's been fun.
Oh, they have a Greatest Discovery one.
Yeah, Greatest.
They did both seasons of Discovery, the short tracks.
Yep.
The first season of Picard.
And it's on a different.
And then some
it's on a different
filler stuff too.
Yeah, it's on a different feed, so you actually have to subscribe to a different podcast to be able to get those.
Okay.
So yeah, whenever I run out of Greatest Generation, I'll go over and I'll switch over to the Greatest Discovery.
And I'm working my way through the seasons of Next Generation. So
okay.
I don't know. Do I jump ahead? I don't know.
Sounds like a personal preference.
Yeah, I know. It's just too many great things to listen for.
Mm-hmm.
Man.
Need more time in the day.
Well, that's true.
That's right.
We could just not work
Less
anymore.
time at work.
I know. If we could just stop working and listen to podcasts, then
exactly.
that'd be totally fine.
I know.
I'd like. That's my ideal holodeck program.
Yeah.
That's not true. I'm sure I could come up with something better.
Well, if you listen to The Greatest Generation, they talk a lot about various cast members' holodeck programs, and we'll leave it at that.
Either Quark's options or Riker's options.
Oh my gosh.
I did go back and I did listen to
Fascinating.
I was just curious, kind of what they had said about these episodes. So I did go back and I did listen to their episodes for Best of Both Worlds.
Oh yes.
And that was their take on it. They were like, they probably just wanted to get Riker on a different ship so that they could like scrub the holodeck. Like, just put him on another ship and like send him really for like the other end of the galaxy, just so he's not anywhere near any of us, corrupting anybody else's holodeck.
That's funny. They're funny guys, man.
Between that and the Twitter account for Riker's Google searches.
Yeah.
Yes, Riker Googling is pretty good stuff.
Have you guys Riker Googling? I'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, you do.
You'll get lost. You'll get lost for a while.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also the Worf Yelp reviews.
Yes.
Oh, I haven't seen those.
That came out like in some of the things, just because he's at the one where they go to the planet and it's got the square, the guy's house and property is okay, but everything else is like obliterated. And they go in and try and figure out what the guy is. And Worf's sitting there drinking tea, and he looks over and he's like, "Good tea, nice house." And he like one other, and so there's all these Yelp reviews where it's just like good food, bad parking, and then like they go to another restaurant and it's just like breakfast good, lunch is poor, more gach, or there's some it's one of those things. It's fun
does
stuff.
not serve prune juice.
Yeah, things like that.
Excellent. So anyway, Will Wheaton is in Stand By Me and The Secret of Nim. Elizabeth Dennehy was Lieutenant Commander Shelby. She was in Red Dragon and Charmed. Whoopi Goldberg played Guinan. She was in Ghost and Sister Act. George Murdoch, who died in 2012, played Admiral J.P. Creepy Hansen. He was in Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, and The X-Files. And Cole Meany played Chief Miles O'Brien. He was in Con Air and Hell on Wheels. In this two-part episode, the Enterprise must battle the Borg, who are intent on conquering Earth with a captured and assimilated Captain Picard as their emissary.
At 2200 hours and 12 minutes, the Lala reported contact with an alien vessel described as cube-shaped. We're coming with every available starship to assist, Captain. But the closest help is 6 days away.
Jean-Luc Picard, captain of the Starship Enterprise. You will lower your shields and prepare to transport yourself aboard our vessel.
Star Trek: The Next Generation, the best of both worlds, on dazzling high-definition Blu-ray.
If you do not withdraw immediately...
You will surrender yourself or we will destroy your ship.
What the hell do they want with you?
One of television's most powerful cliffhangers is now available as a feature-length double episode.
The captain has been altered by the Borg. Altered?
He is a Borg.
Ranked by TV Guide as one of television's top 100 episodes of all time.
I am Locutus, a Borg.
And nominated for 5 Emmy Awards, including Outstanding Achievement in Special Visual Effects.
We're no longer just fighting the Borg. We're fighting the life experience they've stolen from Captain Picard. Now, how the hell do we defeat an enemy that knows us better than we know ourselves?
We will proceed to Earth, and if you attempt to intervene, we will destroy you.
Then take your best shot, Locutus, because we are about to intervene.
This exhilarating release is loaded with special features, including an all-new group commentary track and a gag reel recently discovered from the original camera negatives.
That I hear.
Plus a behind-the-scenes making-of documentary.
That was just a really well-written 2-part episode. It had everything in it.
With Best of Both Worlds, the stakes were so high, and the idea that Patrick had been taken by the Borg and that I say fire at the end of an episode was huge.
Mr. Worf, fire.
Star Trek The Next Generation, the best of both worlds. Coming to high-definition Blu-ray April 30th.
Resistance is futile.
All right. Well, because you never want to shout fire in a crowded starship. All right. So for this one, we'll stick with it. One word or phrase. When you saw on the list that we were going to be talking about Star Trek Next Generation, Best of Both Worlds, what's the one word or short phrase that kind of came to your mind?
Fire.
Well played. Cool.
That was kind of mine too. It was real simple. It was, ooh, I get to watch this one again. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was cool.
This is one of the ones when I go back, because I did at one point start to go back through and rewatch, this is years ago now, rewatch Next Generation from the first episode on.
Right.
Pat, I think that was back when you were doing a rewatch of Deep Space Nine.
Right.
It was like a couple years ago, and I think you were working through Deep Space Nine, and it was like, yeah, I want to do that too, but I started on Next Generation, and I got to finish that first. And so, yeah, I think, though, especially with some of those early seasons, it kind of got to the point where I was like, okay, now I'm just doing this out of principle, because it's kind of a chore.
Some clunkers.
Yeah,
some clunkers.
Filler is kind of a nice term for some of those some of the early ones. And so let's just get through that. But then when I do want to go back and just watch something for fun, like a lot of times this will be one of the ones I'm like, I'm just gonna watch Best of Both Worlds.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna jump back to, like, I'm gonna jump to some of the Q episodes. I'm gonna jump to Best of Both Worlds. I'm gonna jump to All Good Thing. Like I really love that one. I'm gonna jump to the one where they get stuck in the time paradox, and what was it? It wasn't Kelsey Grammer, the captain of the other ship, and the Bozeman. So I'm gonna jump to a lot of my favorites now when I go back and rewatch stuff, and this is definitely one of my favorites. Oh, yeah. So that's why it was fun to get to revisit this one. And I know we did a few years ago. I think it was it was probably 3 years ago now. We did an episode just on Star Trek The Next Generation, because it was the 30th anniversary of the show starting. And we talked about this one back then too, but now we got an opportunity to just kind of cover this one itself. So,
yeah.
So do you guys remember the first time watching this? Did you watch it kind of around the time it came out, or did you come to it later?
Oh, no, we watched it right then and there, and had to wait the 3-4 months till it came back, and that was hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm trying to think back to it. Sorry, got a tickle in my throat. I had to think back to it, and it's funny because I didn't watch this show when it came out, like the first year. You know what I'm saying? I remember kind of coming into it. Like I was aware of it. I remember the TV guide where they show the new one, and I had seen some of the movies and the original series. And then I came into this and I started watching right around this season. And it's funny because until I did the rewatch a couple of years ago where I sat down and just put it all in order, I had no context of the flow, the scope and sequence, if you will, of the episodes. So honestly, the first 1, 2 up until this 1, 2, and third season kind of all jumbled together for me because there was like syndication and repeats. Like I'd watch one and it was like, oh, Riker has a beard. He doesn't have a beard. These are new uniforms. These are old uniforms. I remember as a kid kind of picking up, okay, the effects are a little different. Okay, the doctor's different, like just different characters and all that kind of stuff. But it was like right in this season when I started following it. And yeah, same thing. I kind of remember it was like, they're going to do what? Oh my gosh. Like that's kind of what I just remembered being, yeah, kind of like Bo said, just kind of like at the end of my seat trying to figure out what's going to happen next.
Yeah, I don't remember if I would have watched it when it originally aired, because I really didn't. I would watch the occasional Next Generation episode from time to time, but it was not one like my dad wasn't a fan of it. You know, not that he didn't like it. It wasn't one that he watched. We'd watch all the Star Trek movies. Like, we love the Star Trek movies, but, you know, really wasn't into the TV show all that much. So it would be one where, you know, if it came on, I'd probably stop and watch it a little bit. But it wasn't really until, we moved to England in 91. And when I started in school there was a friend in school, one of the first people I made friends with. He was a huge original series Star Trek fan. And so, you know, he'd talk all about the episodes, and he had like models of the ships and all kinds of other stuff. And, you know, and he had them all on like VHS. He had recorded from whatever TV channel was playing them, replaying them over in England. He had them all on VHS. And so then from there, that kind of got me into Star Trek, because I'd always been a Star Wars fan as a kid, but we watched Star Trek movies. And then I think it was when we were living in England, and that was kind of when I started to get hooked on Star Trek, and I'd watch the original series. But then I started to get into Next Generation, and I think Next Generation was a little bit delayed getting over to England. So I think they were probably like a year or so behind what was happening in the States when that was airing. And it was around about the same time. So that was not too far off. I remember one of the winters that we came back to the States for Christmas. And at that point, I was a pretty big Star Trek fan. And my uncle, who used to show me all the movies way before I was old enough to see all the movies, he knew that I was a big Star Trek fan. And so we didn't have it in England yet, but he had started recording this new Star Trek show for me called Deep Space Nine. And so before we went back to England, he gave me 2 VHS tapes that had like the first, I want to say 10 episodes of Deep Space Nine on it. So for a really long time, like, that was the only other Star Trek I had was, you know, I didn't get to see the rest of Deep Space Nine. I had the first 10 episodes and just replayed those over and over and over again. So I don't think I would have seen this when it originally came out. I would have probably seen it as a rerun somewhere. So,
okay.
No less effective, but I didn't see it, I don't think, when it originally aired.
Right.
This was not Next Generation was not appointment television in our house growing up. But eventually it came to be through VHS and reruns on TV. Because then when we'd come back, and especially we moved back, I don't remember what channel it was, but there was one channel that, like, late at night in the summer times would play like 3 episodes back to back. And I remember being at my grandparents' house in Missouri, and sometimes I'd just stay up at night and I'd watch like the 3 hours of Star Trek The Next Generation they play, and they would never be in order. So it was the same. Yeah,
man, they butchered that stuff back then. They would just, I once had a theory on this, that each time slot went in order, but the time slots were not connected in a row.
Okay.
So the 9 o'clock slot went in order, and the 10 o'clock slot went in order, and the 11 o'clock slot went in order.
Gotcha.
And it proved to be right to a point. There was some fudge factor in there, but it used to drive me batty. I'm like, what why?
Right. Well, and that's the thing, you know, like what you're talking about there, that's kind of how I'd pick them up. So I'd kind of watch them in clumps, you know, I'd watch some and that's where I'm remembering this. And I don't remember being torn up all summer, like trying to figure this, like, I don't, and I kind of wish I did, but I don't have that memory. I do remember the reveal of, oh my gosh, you know, Picard is not part of the Borg.
He's a Borg.
Yeah. But which is another great bit on the Greatest Generation.
Well, there's so many bits you can get out of the Borg. It's crazy. You've got that one. And then honestly, the way Worf delivers the line in this episode, he is a Borg.
Yeah.
It's just, it's comical.
I mean,
especially when you take it out of context. Like,
he sounds like
a Borg.
Well, he sounds like he's about to start crying.
I know.
Right.
Are you crying? Worf, are you crying?
I'm not crying. You're crying.
There's no crying in Starfleet.
But in answer,
I beg to differ.
Well, there's crying. Everyone that has to follow any of the admirals,
right? The Admiral cleanup crew has to.
Yeah, that ain't pretty. Anyways, but no, I get that, and that's why
it's just an old man. It's just an old man's fantasies, Pat.
Oh, well, we'll get to that in a second. But that's, to Bo's point, that's what I remember about the first 3 seasons. They all kind of like, I would be watching a season 3 episode, then a season 1, then a season 2, and it would just bounce all around. But this is the first thing that I remember being like, ooh, this is, how are they going to deal with this? This isn't right.
Yeah. Well, and it was, especially back then, it was pretty rare to have a 2-parter of a TV show.
Right.
And I think I read somewhere that this was the first 2-parter since the 60s for Star Trek.
For Star Trek, yes.
Okay.
It was the first 2-parter since the Menagerie.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it was a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing
the first 2 seasons of Next Generation, the season-ending episodes were not even that great. They ended season 2 on a horrific clip show episode that is in the top 10 worst Next Generation episodes pretty consistently.
Really?
Yeah. Well, and it was, then they have the writer's strike, so they just did clips or...
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's why it's a clip show. It was just so bad.
Yeah, it's funny because this one is really, it's pretty amazing when you see how far it came, even in this, and as we've alluded to and just outright said, I'm kind of I'm listening through all the Greatest Generation up until this point, and it's interesting because when you start, I mean, you've got your handful of episodes in the first couple seasons that are just like, don't watch these. And then you've got your episodes that are like, okay, it's not quite firing on all cylinders, but there's some good stuff, or it's just kind of your run of the mill. This is what we're doing. But then as you go, like there's the second season, and then especially in the third, all of a sudden you'll get some flashes of like, oh, wow, that's a really compelling story, or, oh, wow, that's like a really awesome performance, or, oh, and now by the third season, it's like they'll have 1, maybe 2 really, and then all of a sudden they'll do stuff that's like, why are you doing this? But then by the time, my gosh, when you get to this thing, all of a sudden this is just like, wow, great story, the effects and the what am I trying to say? Would it be cinematography, or how the sets that they build, plus the stories and all. I mean, there's some really good stuff going on, and the show is starting to find its footing. You know what I'm saying?
What I had read in a couple of different places, and when I went back to listen to the Greatest Generation episodes on this one, was, and I wish we could have seen it, was originally they were thinking of doing this as a 3-part episode, and that you would have seen much more of the Battle of Wolf 359.
Mm-hmm.
We would have seen a lot more of that. There would have been a lot more Borg stuff, but
right.
It was just too early. They didn't have the budget for a lot of what they wanted to do.
Right. Well, and so that, I think, then kind of made it fun for me, who had just kind of gotten into like the swing of the Next Generation. Then that was one of those times where it was one of the first times where I remember when I got those VHS tapes of the first 10 episodes of Deep Space Nine, seeing the pilot episode of Deep Space Nine, and I think, doesn't it start with the Battle of Wolf 359, and that's where you see like Sisko was on the ship that he was on, and he goes, so like that little bit of a crossover, I was like, whoa, I know where that's from. Like, I know exactly what's going on here. This is really cool. And that was one of the first times I remember, at least in like a TV show, getting that sense of, wait a minute, like that ties into a moment in that I know this thing. This is cool. So yeah, that was kind of even though we didn't get to see it there, it was kind of nice to get it a little bit later on. And I think, didn't part of it show up too in Voyager? Didn't they do another part of like the?
It gets mentioned a few times.
Yeah. So.
Yeah,
it was still creepy enough to like see that graveyard of starships when they get there, and you didn't need to see the battle. You just see all the derelict ships and everything,
right?
Completely ruined.
Right. I mean, like anything, anytime you can get more special effects that are done well and battle scenes and all, the more of that, the better. But I think it works, and for the storytelling, considering, that the Enterprise was way the heck away and couldn't get there in time and everything, I think it's effective. But you know, maybe the creepy admiral guy should have had kind of like, you know, a little better battle plan.
JP.
Yeah.
Better keep your eye on her, Picard.
Yeah.
Excuse me. What does God need with a blonde lieutenant commander?
Yeah. That kind of shall we say dated writing? Shall we just say downright creepy writing? I don't know what, but that,
all of the above.
Like that.
Apparently,
I don't know. I just kind of get like that dialogue didn't even need to be in there.
Well, apparently Me Too is still going strong in the 23rd century.
Yeah. No kidding. But again, like, it's like that dialogue didn't need to be in there. I mean, it didn't really add anything to the, you know, the B plot and the C plot and everything like that. So, and I mean, even the whole thing, like, and that's what I was alluding to before with where the whole A-Team thing came in, was like, okay, well, we know because the Enterprise is the center of the show. They've got all the best minds and they're going to be the ones to solve the problem. But that doesn't mean the other ships are all packed with dummies. You know, like Riker called into the Admiral and said, well, this is how it happened. And just so you know, Picard is one, you know, and he's just like, then he jumps into that story about, well, I saw him win the marathon as a freshman, so there's no chance in heck that, you know, he's going to help out the other side. And it's like, he's not really helping out the other side. He's kind of being tortured and abused. And I mean, you know, there's all these bad things going on. And the bottom line is they've got all the information that he had. So yeah, he's not willingly, you know, helping them, but it's still helping out their cause. So maybe not lining up all the ships and just going at it is the best play. And they have smart people on their ships that could have figured out ways to slow the Borg down, distract them, lure them into the set of Star Trek II, and, you know, all these other sorts of things. But anyways.
But see, Pat, you're missing the backstory. Is there was a ship at the Battle of Wolf 359 that was just packed full of dummies. It was the USS Minnow, and it was captained by the guy who lost the marathon.
Right.
Yeah.
That's it.
And that's
it.
Actually, they could have won Wolf 359. It was actually his, you know, he was kind of like the Jar Jar Binks of Starfleet. And it was his clumsiness that caused them to lose the whole thing. It actually wasn't the Borg. The Borg got there and everybody was already destroyed.
Yeah, they went slowly through and were kind of bouncing off the ships.
Right. They're just like, well, I don't know what happened here, but our work is done.
All right.
Nothing to see here.
Yes. All right, move along.
Yeah. Well, anyways, like I said, he's doesn't seem to be the most effective admiral.
Well,
and
as admirals go in Star Trek, yes.
Yeah. And he's a little, like I said, it's just, you know, interesting to hear his comments about, you know, female subordinates and,
you know,
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Which, as much as that's creepy, it was nice to see them write it to where she and Riker were not in a romantic a romantic component to their relationship. Theirs was like acrimonious and about two people kind of vying for the, you know.
Oh yeah. Oh, they didn't like each other at all.
Yeah, exactly. Which was nice. And I mean, you know, there's some other certain movie franchises that I won't mention that are possibly sci-fi or possibly not. I don't want any spoilers. And then before you know it, like, you know, there's a male and a female, and for some reason they didn't have any sort of relationship like that, but they put stuff in at the end of the movie and they didn't even approach that with this. So it was kind of refreshing just to see her character as, okay, well, she's a willful, you know, female and not willful, that's the wrong word, but she's a powerful, good at what she does, ambitious and all that. And it's just like, you know, they don't weaken her character by, you know, following along on that creepy dialogue that they had written in earlier, or making her have a love interest or even need a love interest, or, you know, it could just kind of be about
her first love is the Borg. Her first love is the Borg.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah.
So
she loves her job. She loves the Borg.
Right.
It's very Swedish.
Right.
Very Swedish. Did Bo, so you saw this kind of for the first time when it was on TV. Was there ever actually any fear that, as you were watching this, and obviously you would have been a kid at the time, but was there ever actually any fear that she was actually going to steal Riker's job? Like when you were watching it, is that something that you were like, oh, wow, he's going to leave and she's going to take over?
Well, it was interesting because back then, this was the first Star Trek spinoff. So you were like, Star Trek Riker? Like, is that a thing? Would they do another show? Is he strong enough to carry that? Come to find out years later, there was uncertainty if Patrick Stewart was coming back. They hadn't signed his contract for season 4 yet. So I think there was definitely not a sense of solidity in the cast, I guess would be the best way to say it.
So you'd say,
your life, as it has been, is over.
Basically.
Yeah, I remember thinking they were just going to bring her on as another character.
Mm-hmm.
They had killed Tasha Yar.
Need a Tasha 2.0?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They killed Tasha in season 1, and so they were, from the original cast, they were short a female. I thought maybe. But
yeah,
nothing ever really came from that.
Yeah. Would you, I guess, let's say things had progressed this way, if Patrick Stewart was done with the show, like let's say they went a different direction and killed him off, would you have wanted to see Riker become the captain of the Enterprise? And this question is for both of you. So,
yeah, I mean, you can kind of, and that's kind of one of the cool subplots in this is him like, okay, why is he not moving off the show? Why are they not, and it's just like, my work here is not done. For him to then turn that down, if he was kind of stepping in where, that just, I don't know. I can't conceive of a storyline where that would make sense, where he were to, okay, well, the ship is yours now. No, I don't want that. It's kind of like, that doesn't make much sense,
Right. Now, the reality of it is, chances are, even if Picard is dead, he doesn't get the Enterprise.
Yeah.
I mean, if you are to take the Enterprise as the flagship of the fleet,
mm-hmm.
you don't give a green captain the flagship of the fleet.
True.
So there's always that added component, but it is still television, so who knows?
Right. And even that is, and that's kind of the thing that it gets passed over. Well, why isn't he doing this? He gets a pretty frequent chance to be in charge. You know what I'm saying? On the Enterprise, especially, and this is a kind of a theme that comes up on the other podcast, the Great Generation podcast. They say, they're supposed to be out exploring strange new worlds and all that, but they always seem to be like, how do they describe it? Giving people Ubering, giving people rides or doing routine, just kind of the routine things. It doesn't seem like they're out in deep space and, really for all of them. I mean, for a lot of them they are. Anyways, my point is he stepped up and kind of proved his gravitas, so to speak, on many occasions, like this one included. So I don't know. That was kind of one thing like, well, guys, he's kind of like every time this has come up, he's done a good job. And like, if it is the flagship, you kind of want the number 2 to be kind of strong too, because what happens if you get what I'm saying? It's so
mm-hmm.
not to say it's either here or there, but I thought that was an interesting thread throughout.
It's an interesting take on career advancement,
right.
Is being the second in command of the best ship better than a command of your own?
Right.
I think for some people, maybe.
If you want to stay alive, sure.
Right.
Well, and it's funny, and I really want to be careful comparing this too much to stuff that you read about with like the military and all that, because, well, number one, jumping into the world, this isn't supposed to be a military organization necessarily, and number two is whenever you jump into the fictional world, you got to be careful with the real. I just want to be careful of going that too much, but. That being said, it was funny. I was watching a documentary about an aircraft carrier during the Gulf War called Carrier, and it was like a 10-part miniseries. And there was one of the pilots that was like, I'm done now. I'm retiring. And it's like, well, because it's kind of like either promoted up or, you're out. And he says, I don't want to fly a desk. I don't want to be in command of an air, like a naval base or and his thing was just like, I like flying planes and I've gone as far as I can with flying planes. They promote me. And now all of a sudden I'm going to move into something I don't want to do. And it's kind of like, you see that in this episode. Will Riker kind of likes being the guy that goes out and leads teams on the field and does this and does that and does the other thing. He gets promoted. Suddenly he's not going to be able to do that anymore. So, I mean, it does provide some basis for some interesting discussions about career advancement. And we don't even have to take it within a context of that. It can be any kind of a career, like I'm a band director. Now I could keep working and like studying and getting degrees and all that and be like, a department, not me personally. There's no anyone that would want to do that, but I'm saying a band director could become like a department chair, or they could keep going and become a building administrator, or they could keep going and teach at like a university level. And then it's kind of like, I kind of like what I do. Like, I don't want to be promoted away from being able to actually direct a band with kids. You get what I'm saying? But is someone going to, like, you got to move up or at the point, I don't know. There's just different ways to look at that. And I thought that was a pretty interesting kind of subplot to this whole episode.
Well, the interesting thing about Riker is that he was always kind of and that was what was interesting about making him the first officer, is he was always kind of the Kirk of the show, and I think even before necessarily watching a lot of The Next Generation, I would read some of the Next Generation books, like the novelizations of some of the different, I think they did a novelization of Encounter at Farpoint, and then after that, a bunch of the novels were kind of their own stories. They weren't tied to an episode per se. But I vaguely remember, I don't know if it was the Farpoint one or if it was one of the different novels, the Next Generation novels, but they made a point of saying that, and I remember this, so I don't think I pulled it out of anywhere else or just made it up. They made a point of saying in one of the novels that people don't really have middle names in the 23rd and 24th century. So the fact that he's William T. Riker is kind of a throwback to James Tiberius Kirk. And that was kind of a, people don't use middle names anymore. But the fact that he had a middle name was because his parents, wanted him to be, a great historical figure someday. So they kind of almost modeled that after James T. Kirk. And that kind of always stuck with me. Like, so whenever I thought of his character, I always connected his character to being very much like Kirk. And that, at some point, this would ultimately be the guy who takes over, and he'd ultimately be the guy who becomes the captain someday. And so that was kind of always in the back of my mind. So it was interesting when we get to, fast forward to, and this a little bit of spoilers for Picard, if people haven't seen that yet. Fast forward a little bit, and it's like, well, he didn't really end up as, he kind of got jaded and he kind of stepped away from things, and, partly because of their family situation and the health issue with his son and all that. But, he didn't end up becoming necessarily the legendary, Captain Riker that you probably thought he was going to become. There's not that much of you didn't get to see that much of the history. Now, that's not to say that he wasn't an intimidating captain when he did come back in those episodes of Picard, and man the ship for a little bit. But, so that was always something that I kind of always thought eventually at some point he'd get his chance and he'd kind of step up. But you're right. I mean, do you, when you're in that kind of a situation, do you stay put when you are in a really good situation as the second in command of the greatest ship in the fleet? Or do you go, are you the number one in command of a lesser ship?
Right.
So.
Right. And again, I mean, that's specific to the story, but then, you can expand that. And I mean, let's be honest, if we're looking at like a military comparison, I mean, usually the idea that one crew is going to hang together for 7 years, it'd be like unheard of. I mean, it would be like, okay, you've completed this tour. Now this person's getting assigned here. This person's getting assigned here. I mean, that's just kind of the way that those things work. But that being said, I mean, get out of just that direct comparison to something, from like Star Trek to military and get into just your career path. And it's like, are you happy doing the job you're doing or not? Do you want to move or do you not? And I think that now as I take a look, I mean, as a kid, no, I hear what you're saying. And there's one part of me that, yeah, that's what it means. But when you look at it as an adult in the career, it's kind of like, okay, am I ready to move on? No, I'm comfortable. Is it okay to be comfortable? Is it, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's kind of like, plans change and, I'm not in the race I thought I was going to be running. And is that okay? Or, it's a very interesting dynamic, I think, that they introduce, and one that doesn't just confine itself to this episode. I think it's something that you can they revisit and can kind of pull back as the various series progress.
Okay, so very, very serious question I have for each of you. Was it absolutely necessary for Geordi LaForge to do a barrel roll as he was rolling through the door in engineering?
In this episode, no, it was not.
All right.
He did that on purpose.
Okay. He just wanted to do that with some flair.
Well, I maintain that they were stretching LeVar out a little bit because they knew they were going to make him do it in the movie when he would really need to do the barrel roll. Okay. So they had to, they had to test it out a few times.
Okay.
And, that's a tough effect shot, rolling under that drop on doors. So they had to
true.
Try it out a few times for real.
Well, you're upping the stakes here because you never had Scotty roll around on the floor.
Yeah.
No, you did not.
No, you had Scotty slam into the top of a bulkhead with his head, but
Yeah.
I know this ship like the back of my
head.
Yeah. And it's funny in talking about these, originally seeing it, it's kind of the whole Star Wars debate. Okay, which order do you show the movies in? Originally, this works so well as like a cliffhanger, and it builds up and to that final, like, oh my gosh, he's going to fire on the guy that was like his mentor and best friend and everything, like, that whole thing. And it's this huge cliffhanger. And then it's kind of cool seeing it put together as a movie as well, right? But then they say, well, it loses the cliffhanger effect. And I mean, I kind of get that. And I was listening, to, like I said, The Greatest Generation, and they were kind of taking a dim view of that whole, splicing it together. But then I think after you've seen it, what's the difference between just watching it clip from, like having it spliced together or hitting next episode, skip intro, skip theme music? I mean, okay, do you get what I'm saying?
I mean, it's the Netflixification of everything. It's the binge watching that has sort of changed that.
Yeah.
We don't consume television the same way anymore, and I think it shows.
Right. And the thing is, they come back after the big cliffhanger, and it's a big letdown. I mean, it's akin to, okay, Star Wars spoilers for the new trilogy.
There's a new trilogy?
Okay, so
dude,
so Luke gets his lightsaber back from Rey, and the first thing he does.
I gotta jump in real quick. I like both of the movies that are in the new trilogy.
There you go. Okay, there you go. We'll interrogate that that comment. But it's and spoilers for the 2 episodes in the new trilogy. Luke just chucks the lightsaber over his shoulder. I mean, that was kind of it. And it was almost like a humorous playoff. And that's kind of like this. It was like,
okay, so now, all right, sidebar though.
Okay.
You're Luke Skywalker. Are you ever actually throwing something away?
Right.
Like you're just going to go,
yeah.
Okay, come on. I'm ready for you. Like, that's the thing. Like, I can get it out of the water. It doesn't matter.
Right. No, I get it.
That was his Yoda moment.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, meh.
Yeah. But no, and I get it. And I get they played for different things, but it was that kind of thing. You have the big cliffhanger, and then it's like, okay. The big deflector shot, it didn't work. And so now if they splice those movies together, I think, and then again, I'm going way deep dive on it. But then what was cool about that is that introduced the idea that, oh my gosh, they've totally gotten inside of this guy's head, poked around in there, and they know everything he knows. So that was kind of like the next, like, what are we going to do? And I think that I without saying reshoot the show, I think that, if you knew you were going to rescore or you were going to redo the movie, I think you could do some stuff with like some music to help kind of pump up that scene. Like, cause I was almost thinking like it works for the whole thing, but reshoot the music to where, you remember when they come back and you hear the thing like power up, there's no music going on at that point. It's just like dead quiet and it's like, here we go, fire. And then wait 3.5 months. And what do you get? Okay, here's the recap, fire. And it's like silence. And now the thing's shooting the gun. Like, I think like Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan. Remember when they dropped the shields and like Khan's looking around like, where's, what do I do? Like, how do I, the music was building for that.
Where's the override?
Right. The music was building to that whole point to where at the end, it's like in your face. And I think they could have worked the music a little bit more to build up. He says fire, and then just have the music just pounding away at you. And then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, the ray gun isn't working. And then really show that I know everything that just to bring that out a little bit more, that's really where the drama was, is, oh my gosh, this guy knows all our secrets. How are we going to beat him? I don't know. Just kind of took it on a tangent with the whole,
I was worried you were going to say like the whole Force Awakens cliffhanger into Last Jedi where he just, you get there and he tosses the thing back. I was worried you were going to say what they should have done was they end the cliffhanger with Mr. Worf, fire. And then they come back 3 months later and they're like, and now the second part of Best of Both Worlds. And it's like, Mr. Worf, fire. Up the reverse engines. Get us out of here.
Yeah. Have it be like a gag.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, no.
He's a Borg, sir.
He is a Borg.
He is a Borg.
Oh, man.
He's a Borg.
Oh, no, the Borgs.
He's turned Swedish, sir. I always think of the Swedish chef with that. Borg.
Yep.
I know.
Shops at IKEA now.
Yes. That's why everything's cube shaped. Right. It's very easy to put together. That's why they're able to fix the Borg cubes so quickly, because it's IKEA.
Allen wrenches. That's what all those attachments on those Borg arms are. They are all Allen wrenches.
Little Allen wrenches. But it still takes them 15 hours to put together a bookshelf, but they can fix their Borg cube in no time at all.
Right.
Sure.
Right. The materials aren't the best, but it's real dense. So
yeah, it's okay.
That's the next time I walk through IKEA, I think I'm just gonna walk around. Resistance is futile. Must buy new chair.
He is a Borg.
He is a Borg. I am the cutest of Borg. You will give me furniture. Yes.
We'll be reading about you in the news there, John.
There we go. I'm going to walk up to the employees. I am the cutest of Borg. I require furniture. You are here to service me.
Show me to the meatballs.
And they're just gonna say, dude, as long as you put a mask on, you can be whoever the heck you want.
All good.
Yeah.
Put a little glove on with a little mechanical Allen wrench, just going back and forth.
Yeah.
They won't let you in there with one of those. They'll be afraid you'll take stuff apart.
Well, that's true too.
Oh.
Yeah.
It took them a while to build all that display furniture.
Right. I'm just practicing my hygge.
Because that would be the ultimate joke, right?
Yeah.
If you were corporate IKEA, don't you ship all the stuff to the stores in a flat pack and they have to put it together? Like, isn't that the... I mean, isn't that the way it should be?
We will assimilate your furniture into our collective consciousness.
Oh my gosh.
So anyway, The Big Lebowski.
Right.
Yeah.
Big Lebowski. I'm just saying, guys. You gotta watch Legends of Tomorrow. IKEA maybe plays a role in one of the episodes.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Oh,
right.
It's good.
Oh, okay. So I got to watch it for Biggest Biffus and IKEA.
I'm just gonna keep going on the record of saying there are so many reasons to watch that show.
Okay. All right. It's on my list. I'll get it caught up at some point.
Yeah, I mean, and it can be within the next, I don't know, 20 years. Just call me when you do. So,
Okay.
I'm just saying the more time we all have at home, the more chances I'm going to get around to watching that.
That's right.
This is true. We just have to stop having the 9-hour Zoom meetings, but
Well, it's one problem at a time, sir.
I know.
Why don't you watch the episodes during the Zoom meetings?
I just want to. Well, hey, that's definitely a possibility. I just want to go into a meeting and just Wolf 359 the whole thing. The Zoom call does not go well.
I
Enterprise.
was thinking the unlimited Tommy gun would be.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Bottomless basket of bullets.
Yes.
The video conference does not go well. Enterprise.
Every day. I think those words.
Here's what I don't get.
Yeah.
Here's what I don't get.
I hope your list is shorter than mine.
Well, okay. So let me check. Okay. Sort of like you talked about the bottomless nachos and all that kind of stuff. You get something spicy. Okay. And you drink water.
Oh, I love it when he talks food to us.
Water doesn't take care of the spice, right?
Right.
It's true.
You got to have something that like milk or something that that will deaden the spice, right? Like if you eat something that's super spicy that blows your hair off.
Yeah.
And then you
That's
start
the
drinking.
theory, yeah.
You start drinking water. That's okay. So they're going after all these all the Borg with the guns, the phasers, where they only get 1 or 2 shots. Why doesn't Worf bring over some of his like swords and all that kind of stuff, and they actually go after these guys with some sort of a cutting weapon or a bludgeoning device? I mean, heck, even Kyle Reese was somewhat effective against the Terminator with the big metal pipe. I mean, I always wondered, why doesn't Worf grab the Batlath and all the other things he has and go after them with that? Or that being said, like in the one movie when, Picard goes in and pulls out the Tommy gun and goes after them with the Tommy gun, which was pretty cool. Why don't they just get projectile weapons that maybe they're not as effective as beam weapons, but you can still fire some sort of a projectile that will have some knockdown power. I mean,
I need the Greatest Generation's Klingon battle music playing in the background right now.
Yeah.
We have a weapon.
Pat designs the Klingon battle.
We have a cutting weapon. We have a weapon that we can use that is metal. It is called the Allen wrench. Cousin to the Batleth. Perhaps it is a good day to take things apart.
Oh my gosh. Oh.
I agree with you. You could totally go that route. I don't know if their little personal shield things would block the cutting weapons, but yeah. It blocks the phasers, but it probably, I don't know. They have all the little force field stuff, so maybe their force fields can block that stuff too, but The interesting thing I thought about this episode, and I had not heard this up until I was doing a little bit of research for it just over the last few days or so, because when you really do, when I had thought about it, I was like, this one, when I think of the title of this, Best of Both Worlds, I'm like, oh, I automatically know what that is. Automatically know what episode that is. I can picture it in my mind. But when you think about it, the episode title really makes no sense at all.
Yeah, I was going to say it does not.
Best of, but what is that? What does that even mean? The best of both worlds. And so as I was doing a little bit of research on it, apparently it wasn't just Patrick Stewart that they weren't sure was going to return. They also, I believe, were not sure that Brent Spiner was going to come back. And so one of the original concepts for this episode was that both Picard and Data were going to be taken by the Borg, and they were going to assimilate. So Locutus was going to be part Data, part Picard, part Borg, and that it was going to be mixed together, and that if they didn't re-sign, then what would happen is Picard and Data would be dead, and this Locutus of Borg could then come back on occasion as kind of like a recurring villain that could show up from time to time if the Borg returned, in a later season or something else. So apparently that was one of their original plans, and then the episode title makes a little bit more sense if it's the best of both worlds, being part Picard, part Data, and then the Borg takes and assimilates that, and that's what becomes Locutus. If that's the case, episode title makes more sense when you think of it that way. But yeah, otherwise, best of both worlds, like that doesn't fit with anything. Unless you wanted to say, I don't know if you wanted to say that like you have to mix Riker and Shelby. Well, be careful with that. You have to mix the styles of, let's go that way. You have to mix the styles of Riker and Shelby, and maybe that's the best of both worlds, but then that doesn't mean quite as much either, because I don't know.
That's really interesting.
It
like
is a
you
weird
said, like,
title.
The title just doesn't match.
Yeah.
That happens a lot. You hear, the more research you do on any of these episodes, you find that they go through so many rewrites just to get on screen that I sometimes wonder if obviously TV shows now are written a little differently, but they almost should have just stuck with episode numbers and not even bothered with names, because half the time it doesn't mean anything. Or you did it one time and then but no one bothered to go back and retitle it because it was so hard the first time.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah, it's not like, Friends, they had the episode name had a purpose. With Star Trek, and there are some that are obvious, blatantly obvious, and then there are some where you're wondering.
Now, this is the Friends episode, the one with the creepy admiral.
Yes. Yes. And the second, and that was part one, is the one with the creepy admiral, and then part two is
the one with the Allen wrench.
The one with the ambitious lieutenant commander, maybe. Oh, the one where Riker gets the chair.
There you go. Jeez. I could have a couple of different meanings.
Yep.
When Riker's deciding who's going to be the second in command, well, you guys, if you just listen to it, you know that. But the Greatest Generation point out the look on Data's face is priceless when he finds out he's getting passed over, and he's the guy that's the machine that has no emotions. But the way they describe it on Greatest Generation is when he says, "Yeah," so I'm basically picking. His reaction is, "Okay, not the way I do it, but all right,
whatever.
You go, you do you. Good luck."
You two are going to kill each other.
Yeah, I know. And it's funny. I don't know. I go back and forth on this. They kind of give her an edge where she's just kind of like spinning him up. Right. But then I think, okay, wait a minute now. Is it just that she like knows what she wants and she's pushing for it. And I'm kind of like, I'm looking at it differently because she's a female and he's a male. Like I'm trying
She's
to monitor.
definitely after his job. That's
yeah. But I mean, am I being biased, or am I just being biased because he's the character that, has been on for the first, so I'm kind of pulling for him. I'm kind of torn by the whole thing. And I don't know if they should have written it different. I'm glad that there wasn't any relationship tension, between, I'm glad that it was just two people, happen to be a guy, happen to be a girl, and they're going for the same job, and they don't like each other, and they didn't overwrite. I don't think they overwrite the "I don't like you" side of it. I don't know. I think it's written just fine. Maybe I'm just making a big round robin and saying I think I like the way they wrote it.
Yeah, I think it was the tension that built between them was good.
Yeah, I think it was fine. Yeah.
And this episode taught us that the most insulting thing you can say to a man is that he's seasoned.
The question is, what is he seasoned with?
Well,
that's right.
And see that goes to like how he becomes a great pizza chef when you get to Picard.
Yeah.
So it all comes full circle.
Yeah, and yeah, I know. I mean, and it's interesting because they write it like Riker handled some stuff exactly right, and he handled some stuff that was like, dude, you probably should just kind of chill it out. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah,
it was good stuff.
Yeah. If this is what you're whining about, no, you don't get to be the captain.
If what was that?
If this is what you're whining about, you don't get to be the captain.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right. Well, do we have anything else to say before we jump into our 3 questions?
I thought I did, but I couldn't remember it.
Yeah.
So it must not have been that important.
That's all right. We can jump into 3 questions.
Make it so.
There we go.
Computer, status report.
Oh, here's the status report right here.
He asks each traveler 5 questions. 3 questions. 3 questions.
It's impossible to answer.
Impossible because you don't know the answer.
Nobody could answer that question.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. I want to have them answered immediately.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Okay, so now that you said that about Data, because I did not get that far into the Greatest Generation podcast.
Sorry, man.
No,
Spoilers.
that's fine. That's fine. I wasn't going to have time to finish it anyway, so I'll go back to it later. But where you're talking about how, like, what's going on through Data's mind when Riker's going down, they go, Mr. Worf, I considered you, and Mr. Data, I could.
Yes.
It's like, I picture, like, in the back of Data's mind, it's like, what you have just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Nowhere in your rambling, incoherent response.
Well, okay, so
nothing like getting picked last for dodgeball.
The funny thing about that scene is we're talking about a show that we've read was supposed to be 3 episodes long, and yet they still took the time to do that scene.
Mm-hmm.
That scene is done in Star Trek often, and it's done with more efficiency most of the time. It's such a painful scene. The way you do it is, we're at war now.
Mm-hmm.
I need you all where you do best. She's not normally here, so she's going to do this other thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he spends so much time on it. I had forgotten how painfully drawn out that was.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, dude.
None of you are expendable enough to be my first officer. Wesley, come here.
Pretty much. Like, you all have jobs to do. Continue to do them, please.
Yeah.
I'll say, and it happens again later in the season. They do later in the series. They do that exact scene, and they do it so much better.
Yeah. I will say this, and this is again something they mentioned on the Greatest Generation thing about, he refers to it as he watches the clock during the episode, and it's funny. especially now as, you know, movies become available like on your phone or whatever. And it's just like, okay, I got to do this, whatever. I need to have something on to keep me distracted. You put a movie on and you realize, wow, movies aren't as long when you're out mowing the lawn or you're out doing something. And you realize that, wow, by the time I got done, this movie's all pretty much already, you know, but when you sit and watch the movie, it seems to take forever as you're working through it. Anyways, they refer to that as, you know, the one of the hosts of the I can't remember who it was, but was saying he was watching his clock with this one. And in the first 15 minutes of the first part of it, they pack so much into it. And I got to agree with him there. Like, I remember starting to watch this again and thinking like, wow, how much time is, holy Christmas. It's only been like, and I think for me, it was like 15 or 20 minutes or whatever. And it's like, you know, there's some shows out there right now that feel like, you know, they're like 4 minutes or 45 minutes. And it's just like, man, nothing tied up. Like, what did you do with all this time? Like, but in this show, they pack so much in, especially at the very beginning. So I get what you're saying about that scene, but in some other sections, I think there's a whole lot of dialogue or action or what,
balance,
you know,
is weird.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and you could have sped it up even more, because had Chief O'Brien bothered to scan the surface of the planet, he would have been like, you know what, before I beam you guys down, the colony's not there anymore. I just wanted to let you guys know. I mean, I'll beam you into what used to be the middle of town. It's going to be a giant smoking crater. So, but let me scan this real quick first before I send you down. No, it's just the, you know, devil may care attitude of Chief O'Brien. Is like, let's beam him down, see what happens.
That and excited to have somebody to talk to in the transporter room.
Right.
And I hate to say it, but like, you know, them beaming down, remember how they beamed down early? Mm-hmm. And then Riker shows up and it was just like, she already beamed down. It was like, and no one thought to call me. Like, what's Data's deal? Like, why is it, you know, well, and he's like
Data
the
was
second
superior officer. Data was doing as he was told.
But did she say, don't let him know? Maybe, you know.
No, but she didn't tell him to call. She just said, we're going. And he said, okay.
I don't know. Maybe if she's
okay.
Hey, if she's being mentored by the creepy Uncle Admiral, maybe she's just like, Data, we're gonna beam down to the planet. This will be our little secret.
This is what JP and I do.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah.
Anyway, question number one.
It is fully functional.
That's question number one.
Is there number one? Yeah, all right. There you go, Jinx. There you go. Nice.
All right. Well, apparently, resistance is always futile because the Borg seem to always lose. So name one thing that actually is futile. And if you say restarting school in the fall.
Is that one already taken?
I don't know. Was that your answer, Bo?
It may have been one that I put down, yes.
Okay. It's funny, but it's not ha-ha funny.
No, not at all. It's sad clown funny.
Mm-hmm.
They're all going to die.
Oh!
No.
They're all Borgs!
Your life, as it has been, is over.
Yeah.
We'll skip the court-martial this time.
There we go. Anyway. Okay, here's a funny joke. Actually, when you almost lost it with that one.
I thought there was a pretty funny joke in there.
I know. This one, John was arguing with, I don't remember what we were arguing about, but it had something to do. Somehow communism got brought into part of a discussion.
Okay.
I don't recall how, but he was like being his usual 13-year-old argumentative self. Hi, John. Glad you're listening. And so he was doing this thing. He was sitting on the couch. I think we were watching an episode of The Flash. And for some reason he was like arguing something. And he said, well, but communism is like when you can like take all of people's property and like you give it to other people. And he keeps going on and on. I said, well, you're not exactly right. You know, you're getting kind of close to it, but you're missing some things here and there. And he's super serious about it. And so finally he said something about it being funny, and I just very deadpan, like as if I was not even joking. I said, well, communist jokes are only funny when everyone gets it. And he completely lost it. Like the kid started choking because he just was laughing so hard. And it was like I didn't expect to get that kind of a reaction, but I thought he was awesome. I thought he was just going to die, like right there on the couch, because he just I think he stopped breathing for a minute. I was like, I don't know that it was that funny, but okay.
Oh man, that's cool when it snaps around and becomes a point of humor and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Good.
That's good.
Good times. Good times. So what is feudal?
Social media.
There you go.
There you go.
Changing someone's viewpoint.
Yeah.
Yep.
Having a discussion in the modern world about anything other than a TV show, and even sometimes that can be fraught with danger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd like to think in a perfect world, it's just like, okay, well, isn't that the old adage about debating? You don't debate to change the other person's mind, and all this kind of stuff. But it's just like we need to learn to coexist. But right now, no.
Mm-hmm.
And so it does seem kind of futile.
Yeah. Dialogue seems futile sometimes. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of monologuing going on.
I'm trying to figure out how to word this one. Having an opinion and not offending someone.
I'm offended you said that.
I expected as much.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I will fight you with my Allen wrench.
Getting the picture of a Borg with an Allen wrench walking around IKEA out of my head. Now that's gonna be futile.
I'm gonna Photoshop one for you.
This is
I'm gonna put it on t-shirt. I'm gonna put it on t-shirt for you. It's gonna be a Borg with a little Allen wrench on the end of his little stub hand, with a giant IKEA sign in the background.
Oh dear.
IKEA, you will be assimilated.
And with the other hand, he's pushing a cart that has like a couch and a potted plant.
Wow.
And a bag of meatballs.
Now, see, in true 2020 style, it shouldn't be a T-shirt. It should be a mask.
Okay. Okay. Well, we can either go mask, or I can go the public radio route and get you a tote bag.
Oh, I didn't think about the tote bag. How dare I?
That's right. I don't know if I can fit all that on a mask.
Yeah, that might be challenging.
All right.
Symbolically, you just do a big Allen wrench.
Well, that's true. Yeah. Like a little Allen wrench mustache on the mask. There we go. There you go. There you go. We got this all figured out now.
And the Allen wrench, he's a Borg.
There you go.
He's a Borg.
He is a Borg.
He's a Borg.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, Worf, not your finest hour.
No.
Perhaps it is a good day to overact.
Well, and there's a whole, and I'm not saying anything that...
It is Star Trek. The James T. Kirk School of Acting was in full force.
That's true.
I'm not saying anything that nobody knows or that everybody, but there's plenty of those, Worf versus Doors,
Oh my God.
Or right. And I guess they make it they say it's a trope, but like you take the character that's supposed to be the strongest and the best fighter and all that kind of stuff, and then he's always the guy that becomes kind of like symbolic of how strong whatever's coming onto the ship is, because they always throw that guy out and he gets it handed to him, right? And so that everyone goes, oh my gosh, look how powerful these other people are because he took down our strongest guy. But now then you get into the conundrum of the strongest guy is never used because he's always getting it handed to him. So
right.
That was always one of my favorite things on the Orville, is when he was using he'd always use the security chief, the one woman, the security
chief. To loosen his pickle jars?
Yep. He's like, open this pickle jar for me. And it was always to like open a door or something like that he couldn't get open himself. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Question number 2, issue 2. Who is the better commander, Shelby or Riker?
Well, I'm going to say Riker.
Okay.
Yep.
I think she
if you gave her free reign to do everything she wanted to do, because some of her plans were ones that they initially ended up going with.
Right.
The whole idea to separate the saucer section and all that.
But her timing is always off because she doesn't have the perspective needed to make the decisions at the right time. She may have great ideas.
She's not seasoned enough, you're saying.
Well, I don't want to say that because that makes it sound like only old people know what's going on.
I bet JP does.
He knows something. I just think that her execution is off.
Okay.
She needs to evaluate her situation better. Her ideas are sound.
Mm-hmm. She needs a little more experience.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going Riker too. I just playing devil's advocate there.
Totally.
Yeah.
Hey.
And Pat, you said Riker as well.
Yeah, Riker. I mean, and honestly, everything that they show is very, she's challenging him to get the captain's ear, but they never really show her in terms of taking a plan and breaking it down for the subordinates, or motivating a crew, or bringing people together, and the list goes on. And that's like whenever you're the boss, whether that's, the captain or the commander or the principal or the head of household or whatever you want to say, you got to learn how to have people work together. And now part of it was they didn't quite give her a chance to kind of show that, but that's something that Riker's been having to learn and do and everything over how many years. I don't know if she had the experience doing that. I mean, was she the first officer on any other ship?
That's part of it. It sounds like not. It sounds like they've had her squirreled away at Starfleet Command working on strategy for 2 years.
Right. And so that's...
And it's just different in a lab.
Well, yeah. And I mean, that's cool, but that's your skill set. Now, if you're going to get out there and you're going to learn how to lead people, okay, now you're going to have to put that into your skill set, but you're going to no longer be, working this or that or the other thing. You got to lead people. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think that was one of the big character arcs that was kind of interesting with the Worf character, was he went that route, went the command route from just being security. Right. And so you saw him in more of a leadership role. Right. And so that's interesting. Although going back, he's always in charge of the security team. So, I mean, so that whole like being in charge, that doesn't just mean that you're an expert in one area. You get, I'm kind of overstating the point, but yeah, that's why I think he was the better, he was the better commander. Just because, I mean, her whole thing was to, I want your job. I want it was all, they centered the character. It was like self-centered. This is what I want for me, as opposed to here's how I can fit in and bring this team together. This is how I can take this to the next level. Here's, so that's, yeah, my long-winded of saying, yes, I agree.
That's fine. All right, and then final question. If you could captain a starship in the Star Trek universe, that doesn't have to be a starship, but if you could captain a ship in the Star Trek universe, which one would it be? And this can be Federation, Klingon, Romulan, Ferengi, any era, any ship that exists in Star Trek. If you could captain one, what would you captain? And
you got one, Bo?
My lovely wife.
Go ahead, John.
We really enjoyed. I've said before, we enjoyed the TV show Hell on Wheels, and the guy who plays the main character in Hell on Wheels is also Captain Pike in Discovery. And so my lovely wife said, "Well, I don't know that I'd want to captain a ship, but could you be the first officer on a ship?" And I was like, "Sure." She's like, "Okay, I'll be the first officer on Captain Pike's Enterprise." And I was like, "What are your motives
I was just gonna say, but
wait a minute, hold on.
This is this question has taken on a new.
Do we
wrinkle.
like Star Trek for the same reasons?
No.
Or the answer is yes.
Did she look at you and say it's just one wife's fantasy, John? It wasn't anything like that, right? Like,
could be. The needs of the one outweigh. Yeah. My answer would be so I've got a couple, and I think I would just go straight because I spent some time looking at it. Was mainly going to be based off of like how they look, and like that would be the cool one to be the captain of. And I used to, as a kid, when I was still just a very huge Star Trek fan, I used to love to go. I never bought the book itself, but I would go to this bookstore when we lived in England, and they had a copy of the. It was the books they would have with like the schematics of the starships, and I would always go and I'd take a look at that, and I remember. Oh, do you have a copy? Yeah. And so I would go and I'd take a look at it. I was like, oh, this is so cool because in that book, they even had, because no internet at that point, they even had copies of this is what the NCC 1701C looks like, or the B, or I'm like, you're kidding me. They've never done those in a movie or a TV show. And so it was always fun to kind of go through that and look through those and just like see the different schematics and blueprints of what the different ships would look like. But I always, like, even when I went through and I looked at the different ships, I was like, you know what? I used to have like 2 different models of the Enterprise D. And I used to have, all these different models of, I used to love the Klingon Bird of Prey. I loved how that ship looked. And even like the Romulan Warbird from Next Generation and stuff like that. But I kept coming back to, I've got the soft spot for the NCC 1701A. Like that's, it's the classic one. It's the one that, I grew up watching all the movies with that one. So I think I would still go that one. Would be the 1701A Enterprise from the movies. The other one I would pick actually would be the Enterprise from Enterprise, the NX-01.
Oh yeah,
so
okay.
I always like the look of that one. I was like, that's really, it's different enough. It's different from the other Enterprises. I really like the look of that one. So if it wasn't going to be movie Enterprise, it would be the NX-01.
Right on.
Yeah, nice, man. Yeah.
So I have 2 also. I love the Defiant. That little, quick, slick little race car of a battleship.
Tough little ship.
Just let's go, man.
Yeah.
But I'm also a bells and whistles guy, and that Enterprise E from First Contact. I mean, that is a slick. That where the Defiant is the race car, that Sovereign class Enterprise is the luxury automobile, man. You're in style when you're on that thing.
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool. It's funny. I'm just going to take both of yours. I mean, like the Defiant, that thing's pretty cool. But then John, like you said, I mean, you kind of remember what you watched as a kid. And I remember watching not the original series one, but the one from the movies, like the Wrath of Khan, like I remember seeing that and just all the sets looked really cool. And yeah, so it was, yeah, I think both of those would have been really cool. But yeah, it's hard to fault against the Defiant. That thing was pretty cool and played such a good role in the Deep Space Nine series too. So yeah, fun stuff.
Yeah, I remember I used to have a set when I was in school in England. I bought a set because we had like a model building club after school, and one of the sets I bought was 3 different Enterprises. So it was the original series Enterprise, then it was the movie Enterprise, and then it was the Enterprise D from Next Generation. So it was all the ones that existed up to that point, because Generations hadn't come out yet, so we hadn't seen that was the B in Generations, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
At the very beginning.
Yes.
Yeah. Which
was really just the Excelsior from the movie anyway.
Right,
it wasn't.
right. You know, with Captain Cameron. And, yeah. And, you know, actually, if you fly the ship backwards, things might help. I don't know.
Well, then the torpedoes get there before Tuesday.
Well, that's true. That is true. And then I had another kit that I bought that had it was a Klingon battle cruiser from the original series. It was a giant model of the Romulan warbird. It was the old Romulan warbird from the original series TV show, and it was a Klingon bird of prey. And you could you squeeze the back of it, and the little wings would go up and down. And it was an awesome set. And you know what? It actually came with it had a Ferengi battle cruiser too. And, you know, you had to put together the whole thing. You had to paint all of it. You had to do all that stuff. And I just remember I spent hours putting these things together, and I had them displayed up in my room, and I absolutely I loved that model set. And I feel like I have them maybe squirreled away somewhere. I have no clue where they are right now, but they're somewhere. I would love to find those again. But, yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
And there's so many fun ships, like just all the different designs that they've come out with over the years.
Yeah, and they do a really neat job with some of it of really kind of making each group kind of have their own looking ship, right? Kind of that, you know, the family of design kind of works for it. And that the Klingon bird of prey design, you know, looked so cool. And but you know, all the Klingon ships look like that. I think that's one thing they do pretty darn well is they give the ships, you know, they all kind of have their unique look, you know. And I know that one of the faults can be, well, traveling through space wouldn't really go like that, you know. That's, you know, but that being said, I think for entertainment value and I think that those are pretty cool. Yeah. So.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you guys for being here for Star Trek Next Generation, the best of both worlds.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
We will not leave this one on a cliffhanger, so we'll go ahead and end this one. It'll be fine. And we didn't get much of a chance to talk about it, but if anybody is interested, the next episode that would follow Best of Both Worlds is kind of a nice wrap-up. Not a lot of action at all, but a very and kind of very important to some later stuff that happens, you know, ties into some things that happen on down the line with Picard, and even ultimately ties into some events that happen when you get to the series finale with All Good Things. So, you know, very much a character-driven episode once you get it. The family, I think, Bo, you said, is what the title of that one is. So
yep.
That is also a good one. Kind of a nice, I don't know if I'd call it a third part, but a little bit more of maybe like an epilogue to Best of Both Worlds. So that's a good one to check out too if you have not seen that one yet as well. So in the meantime, you can go visit our website, 30podcast.com, at 30podcast on most of the different social medias. Great way to find us there. Voicemail, 872-356-6843. Our next episode's coming up in Time and Space Month. We've got one more Time and Space movie, and that's Spaced Invaders. And then at the end of this month, we're also going to be doing Mo Better Blues. And then in September, we slide on into Kids Month, and that is going to be Kindergarten Cop, Home Alone, DuckTales the movie, and Problem Child. So we're hoping to see you back here for all of those. If you want to get in touch with us, give us some feedback, or just kind of put in some of your 2 cents for any of those movies that are coming up, or any of the movies we've already covered. We would love to hear from you. So please feel free to do that either through the voicemail line, email, Twitter, Instagram, wherever. And we will look forward to getting your feedback on that. So in the meantime, be excellent to each other. Go watch some good movies, and we'll see you back here next time.